Well, good day to you. It is March the 5th. It really is March the 5th. Can you believe it? Hope you're doing well wherever you are, whenever you happen to be listening to this video. It might be a different day that you're checking these videos out. Now, if this is your first time ever listening to Search for Signs, welcome. If you listen to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 even videos, 50 videos, welcome back. Now, my name is Gary Willing, and what we talk about here is we talk about the emergence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Why are they returning now? What does it mean for everyone? And of course, their priorities, which above all, Maitreya says we need peace. Got to have peace. Our very survival depends on whether we do this or not. Maitreya puts it like this. Without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. And without peace, there could be no future. Now, if you're kind of caught in the hurricane of emotions of watching the news and you just feel like there's absolutely no hope out there, right? Well, let me let you in on a little secret. Are you listening? You listening? Just get real close to your computer or whatever. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. You don't have to believe me, okay? I want you to do some research. I want you to look at the miracle signs that have been going on for decades. It's actually evidence of hope. There's evidence that we're going to get through this. Anything from healing waters, crosses of light, patterns of light, UFOs even, crop circles, the Norwegian spiral, lights over Jerusalem, weeping icons, the Hindu milk miracle, disappearing hitchhikers, angel sightings, people being saved by angels, visited by angels, that kind of thing. These are all evidence of hope and all evidence that we're one family because they're happening to every religion, no matter what they are. Christians are having their miracles, but yet guess what? Muslims are having their miracles too. The Hindus are having their miracles. Jewish people are having their miracles. And even people of no faith whatsoever are having miracles as well. So you don't have to subscribe to a religious belief like so many people from the religious groups will tell you have to. You don't have to. Right? So now I do want to say this, and I've said this before, and I'll kind of keep saying it. You don't have to look at this information from a religious standpoint. It's more important when you start looking at this, and especially if you're somebody that likes to do research upon coming up on new information. If you look at the links in the description of each video, I do recommend checking out the Sharon National website. Look at George Adamski's, the foundation, even, and which talks about Space Brothers and the UFO activity and so forth, and why are they here, and are they beneficial or not, that kind of thing. It's not important to look at any of this information from a religious standpoint, okay? It's more important to look at it from more of a scientific standpoint and from the standpoint of the priorities of Maitreya, because if you go to the Sharon National website, it's not about him being a religious leader, because he's not. It's about us saving ourselves from ourselves, really. Saving the hungry of the world, creating peace, creating justice, those kind of things. And so that is the most important thing. I get asked questions nearly every time about the religious aspect of these things. And like I said, I don't mind answering this. But it's far more important to talk about the priorities of Maitreya. When we talk about the religious aspect of these things or kind of wax intellectual about some of this information, it really is, in my perspective, like maybe polishing brass on the Titanic. You know what I'm saying? We got to, focus on what's the emergency. And the emergency is we have to save our environment. We have to SOP, save our planet, we have to save our environment, and we have to create peace. If we don't, we might not have a future much longer. So like I said, I don't mind answering these questions. I try my best to answer the questions. I don't know everything. I know more about this topic than I do about most of the questions that people ask. And I kind of fumble around and try to answer it as best I can. But if you're somebody that likes to do research, look at this information from that standpoint. Okay. And if you're a Christian doing it, stay a Christian. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Just stay a Christian who's wanting peace, who's wanting to save our planet, who's, wanting to end hunger and that kind of thing. So that's the most important thing to look at. Okay. Now, but there is some other information about this story about who and what Maitreya is and all that kind of stuff, which is important, but it's not as important as knowing the priorities of peace Without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be, or without future. Did I say it right? I think I did. Anyway, I said it so fast, but anyway. And, we talk about the principle of sharing all the time on this video, where it's not about communism or capitalism. It's about countries looking at the excesses of what they have and giving it freely to other countries and so forth. And I've even brought on speakers from other organizations that are focused solely on Article 25 of the UN resolution, which is about the principle of sharing and that kind of thing, which we just have to implement it as a people. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, if you have a question or two you would like to ask about this information, even if it's religious, feel free. Even if you think I might have answered this question before, it's not a big deal. I don't expect everybody to listen to all my videos and all the way through, but post your question as a comment. You can email me. And like I said, if you're somebody that doesn't like to ask questions or post comments, because I know for myself, when I listen to YouTube videos, I'm not the first person to post questions or ask comments. Ask questions or post comments. I just listen to it and maybe do some other research and move on with my life, right? So you might be like me. Look at the links, go to the Share International website. You'll see and read a lot of really interesting information that you can't get anywhere else, because it's coming from Benjamin Creme, who is the source of this information, really. And you can read his master's articles about various things about the world and, current events that happen. Maybe not so current because Benjamin Creme passed away, but you know what I mean? But current events kind of, and then you can read some messages from Maitreya for yourself and that kind of thing. So you can, a lot of interesting things. And they talk about the miracles too and tie it into this story, so you can kind of get information that way. So hopefully you do. All right, now, the first question. Joku Vane, can you tell what is the situation of Maitreya's Declaration Day related to the world situation at the moment? And if you're not familiar with it, what he's talking about, the Day of Declaration, is when Maitreya actually comes before the world after being on TV for as long as he is. Let me go back. So Maitreya is on TV now, not claiming to be Maitreya, but claiming to be an ordinary person, okay? But deeply, deeply concerned about our problems. That's why I'm telling you, it's not important to know or believe who Maitreya is or even recognize Maitreya on TV. But he is speaking to people on TV, millions of people on TV. And somebody put something a few videos ago, they thought it was because he was dull. It's not because he's dull. I can assure you of that. I've met Maitreya many times. He's not dull. He's speaking very simply in a way that it's not drawing attention to him. So he's not using phrases like without sharing there could be no justice, without justice there could be no peace. He's probably talking about it in a different way so people can understand it better, right? Now, to get back to Joku, what he's asking is eventually, and I don't think it's going to be much longer. It might be a few months. It might be a year. It might be 2. I don't know. It just depends on humanity. He will start to speak with a greater sense of urgency and say things that people who know this information, even on a little bit of, a little level, would start to pick up, and then that could be Maitreya. But he won't declare himself as Maitreya until there's going to come a point where we as a people will demand from our media representatives to allow him to speak to everyone at one time. So it's going to be something that humanity requests from the media, and they will allow him to speak. He'll come before the world. All the TV channels will be linked for this one event and so forth, and he will speak directly to us. Now, he's not going to speak to us by using his mouth. He's going to overshadow the entire world at the same time. It will be a global Pentecost, if you're familiar with religious terms, okay? He will speak to us in our own language, in our own head. So if you're English, you'll hear him in English. If you're American, you'll hear him in American. If you're from the east side of Atlanta, you'll hear him in Covingtonese. If you're French and French, Japanese and Japanese, and that's, if you're Filipino, you hear in Tagalog or whatever. Anyway, so you'll hear his language in your mother tongue and his call to humanity. But that's going to be when he declares himself as Maitreya, is what he's saying. So just so we're all kind of on the same page. Joku, I cannot personally tell you in any kind of honesty that what's going on in the world, how it's affecting the Day of Declaration. I can just tell you this, that it will eventually happen. Okay? I don't know when. I don't even know if Maitreya knows exactly when. Because according to Benjamin Creme, and I don't see time like this, I see it just like you do, is they see time as all as one. Past, present, and future happening at one. And in the future, they view it as like threads for anything from the less likely to the could possibly happen to the very certain is going to happen kind of deal. And then there's those points in our future that will definitely happen. The definitely happen thing is not on a certain day. They would look at it as a window of time, like it could happen between this time and that time and so forth. And I do think, in my own humble opinion about the world situation, okay, the world seems very divided, right? And there are groups that are starting to stand up for their own, for justice for themselves, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? That it's creating a lot of fear and uncertainty for people because they're not used to all these groups marching for what they want, that kind of thing. There's uncertainty economically and that kind of thing. And you got all sorts of garbage going on and people throwing their idea here and there and their opinions this way and rumors and conspiracy theories and blah, 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 right? Now, I don't think that the situation as it is right now can go on much longer. And the masters are very, very aware of what's going on. And they know that, and Maitreya does too. He sees it better than anyone can see it. Even better than Donald Trump claims that he can see it. Okay, so it's just but at the same time, he's got to allow us to go through it to some degree before he can do what he's got to do and say a little bit better and start to galvanize humanity for change and so forth. But, he knows that we're going to get through this. He knows it's tough for all of us. And he's said many times through Benjamin Creme that, just a little longer, everything's going to be fine. He said it like this, one thing that really stuck with me. He goes, all will be well. All manner of things will be well. So, he's hopeful because he sees the future that we will definitely get through it. I mean, there's a guarantee that we are going to get through this. But is it bringing his Day of Declaration closer or moving it farther away? Only Maitreya can answer that question. I don't think it's very long. I don't think we'll have to be waiting another decade before we see Maitreya on TV. But who knows? I mean, if you had talked to Gary 25 years ago, I would have been convinced that it would have happened in the mid-90s. And I think there was a strong likelihood that it could have happened in the mid-90s. It was just humanity's free will kept putting it back and putting it back. Just like now, it's pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back. And it's making things harder and harder and worse and worse and worse, more and more and more divided because we haven't learned the lessons yet. But anyway, so does that make sense? So hopefully I answered that question. I can't honestly, I guess my simplest answer to your question is I can't truly answer that. I can only guess just like you, so, but that's as best I can do. Now, the next question comes from Rick. Hello, Gary. Hello, Rick. You're always so polite when you ask questions. My question is, did Father Padre Pio, also known as Padre Pio of Pietrelcina? If you put a little accent on the end, it always makes it sound like you know how to speak Italian. And of the Catholic Church, have a connection to Maitreya. Someone gave me a cloth scarf to wrap around my neck. 'Twas not meant to be funny. Apparently it has healing energy similar to Maitreya's hand photo. Thank you. Now, was it, I guess my question back to you, is it a scarf that was supposedly from this St. Pio or not? I don't know. Let's get into the Padre Pio. Padre Pio lived not too long ago and passed away. Benjamin Creme's master, somebody asked him his point in evolution and his race structure, and his point in evolution was a 2.3. So he was a second degree initiate on par with somebody like JFK, Picasso, a little more advanced than somebody like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, if that kind of puts it into perspective. Somebody asked in the last video whether he could, through meditation or hypnosis, create a mind-to-mind contact with Maitreya. And I talked about how somebody had to be evolved enough to be able to be able to keep their attention high enough for a master to be able to communicate to them effectively and all that kind of stuff. Because the masters aren't going to communicate with you if they can't communicate with you. They wouldn't even try. You know what I mean? So it's not that they don't want to. It's just that if the person's not evolved enough to be able to receive any kind of messages anyway, because they're astrally polarized, which is what most of us are, focused on the emotions and not the higher mind, then they're not even going to do it. Right? They're not even going to try to communicate with you. You would have to they would know where your point in evolution is, and they would know how high you can keep your attention before they even try to work with you that way. He was advanced enough to be able to have a mental telepathic contact with a master, but just almost evolved enough to be able to have a mind-to-mind contact with Maitreya. So he wasn't quite as advanced enough. Now, whenever his next life will be, he will eventually, probably very quickly, be able to, start to get evolved enough to where he could do that. But he was a sixth-ray disciple of probably more than likely the Master Jesus. And when it comes to healing from, these priests who eventually become saints because they attribute miracles, somebody might pray to one of the statues of these, saints or whatever. If that person isn't a master already, like let's say that like St. Francis Assisi is a master, right? People pray to his statue all the time, and he's a patron saint of pets and stuff. Or one of the apostles or something, that more than likely could be that master per se, right? So if you're Catholic and you prayed to the Virgin Mary and you have a healing or something like that, so more than likely it's the master who was the Madonna who did that, right? Now, this particular priest is probably more than likely not a master yet. So any kind of healing that's happened after he's passed away or miracle that is attributed to him is coming from maybe the Master Jesus or the master who was the Madonna or some other master might have done it. And then that person gets the credit and they stole the credit from that master. Now, in terms of your cloth, I mean, I can't say it's healing or not or whatever. I just know that and I'm not saying not to use it in lieu of the hand or in lieu of the hand and in lieu of that. But Maitreya's hand, because of who Maitreya is, being the master of all the masters, being able to embody the Christ principle and so forth, I would say definitely try it, and definitely use it as best you can because it can definitely help, So anyway. Hopefully that helps, my friend. Right. Now let's get on to the some of the questions that I didn't get a chance to answer in the last video. All right. So one question that you asked, Robert: some religions, such as Mormonism, teach that everything is material, that only matter exists, that although spirit exists, spirit itself is a form of matter. Does Maitreya believe this? Again, Maitreya doesn't believe anything. Maitreya knows, okay? So any one of these masters, they don't really go off of belief like we do. Belief would be, there's always going to be this element of doubt, right? I mean, I guess is what it is, you know what I mean? He knows. He knows that he knows, right? And so now to answer your question, since you asked me, everything that we would consider in cosmos to be, however high or low, is matter. Right? So scientists postulate that the physical universe consists of what? Solid, liquid, and gas, and that's it. Well, that's a very, very crude, basic, and limited way of looking at the universe. In fact, even just on the physical plane, there's 4 other levels of physicality called the etheric. So when George Adamski or Benjamin Creme talk about the activity of the Space Brothers in these UFOs, and that kind of thing, they live and breathe and move and have their being on the 4 levels of physicality above gas called the etheric. So if you were to go to Mars or go to Venus or Jupiter or Saturn or whatever, of course you wouldn't see anything. You would just see a bunch of rocks and maybe some ice or something like this, right? But like that probe that's on Mars right now, right? That's all it sees is looks like desert, right? It looks like New Mexico kind of, and the high plains in New Mexico because there's a little bit of ice here or there. Well, there are more people living on Mars than there are in the world and on Earth. So if that probe could see the etheric planes, they would see a wondrous civilization with people hustling about and spaceships going around and trains, all that kind of stuff, and people living their life on that planet, right? So But that's matter, right? And then if you look at above that, is the astral emotional plane, and there's 7 levels of that, and then there's 7 mental planes, and then there's 7 spiritual planes, and there's the Buddhic plane, and there's this. So that is all matter from some point of view. And that makes up the cosmic physical plane, and then there's 7 levels of that, and then there's 7 levels of cosmic astral plane, and then there's 7, it just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. So when we get up to the level of, beyond, let's say, I don't even know why we're even talking about this, but let's say beyond the level of the logos of a galaxy, right? And that was our body, right? Several galaxies, we made up our body, just like the cells in our body make up our body, right? That even the highest level of what we would consider spirit to be, they would look at it as inert as a rock. So it's as above, so below, right? I mean, we're living on an electron, really, from some point of view, right? So it's just in an atom. I mean, that's how tiny it is. So as above, so below. So yes, what you're saying is true, is everything, even spirit, is matter. But there is, to talk about Jehovah, right? You had asked the question about Jehovah. What does Maitreya believe, or, about Jehovah? Maitreya will tell you that, yes, there is consciousness. And he will say it a lot better than me, because he knows the truth, and I'm still learning the truth just like everybody else. But it's just, there is a part of God that allows all of consciousness to exist. And that is the self. That's the divinity that we all share. And it allows everything to exist without interfering with it. And yet, no matter what consciousness is or how it's manifesting itself, it doesn't affect that space. And the example that I used, Robert, the last time, was a car in your driveway. There's a space that allows a car in your driveway to exist, does it not? And if it wasn't for that space, your car couldn't exist. But yet, where does the space end? Does it end at the end of your driveway? Does it end at the end of your street? Does it end at the end of your town, state, country, at the end of the world? Or does it go way beyond where we can't even imagine, where it never ends, right? So that is the absolute that Maitreya would say is beyond consciousness, right? We don't all share the same consciousness yet, but yet we share that same divinity. And that that divinity that allows everything to live and move and have its being, like Paul said, consciousness doesn't affect it, and it's always there. It'll always be there. And, every time the universe is created and recreated over and over ad infinitum, it expands into itself. It expands back into, it goes back, and it expands. It's like the divine breath. So there is no, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. You asked me these questions, so I'm telling you my version of it, right? The Jehovah view of the view that our ancestors had of God is just a view that they had of God, that a teacher probably told them, Moses probably told them about Jehovah. Perhaps he went into greater detail, maybe not, but to give people a sense that there's something other than them, right? And then there were Indians and Native Americans that their gods were hunters and gatherers, or, they prayed to a god for, saying, so it's just, Maitreya puts it like this: man relates to man, does man relate to God? And it can be viewed from a different way. So for instance, you could look at it as, and I know you might not think I'm answering your question, but I'm trying. Okay. It's just, how do I say this? That saying that Maitreya said, that, as so man relates to man, so does man relate to God. It could be viewed a couple different ways. Like, for instance, you can't say that you serve God without serving man. That's one way, right? The other way, to kind of relate it back to your question, is whatever the conscious level of a person is, that's how they're going to view God. So, Maitreya doesn't view God as a Jehovah, or even as a hunter-gatherer would, as the Native Americans do. He sees God as God really is. But he sees it from his perspective, but there are beings above him that see God far greater than even he sees it, right? But eventually we all will see the truth from, so what the masters know the truth, right? But there's that they see even from a higher perspective, which I don't really want to get into because I'm not at that level. That's even a limited point of view. You know what I mean? So it just keeps going and going and going. There is no end to God. That's why there's no truth to Jehovah in the way that the Old Testament version of Jehovah, that where there's an end to who God is. There is no end to who God is. It keeps going on, and we make up our consciousness, all your consciousness, my consciousness, Maitreya's consciousness, Donald J. Trump's consciousness. They all makes up what we would think God to be. We're all a part of in that body of God at the same time, as above, so below, right? So does that answer that question? Now or maybe it doesn't. I often think that I answer your questions, Robert, and then you can turn around and tell me I didn't. You kind of asked some other question. You asked a question. So might Trump be Maitreya? Now, there's no truth to. Thomas Horn has his beliefs and his conspiracy theories or whatever, and if you believe it, you believe it. If you don't, you don't. But how do I say this? What I want to say, and this is specifically for you, Robert, at this moment in time, since you asked these questions, is it is far more important to look at this information for what it should be looked at, as what you can do to help SOP save the planet. And we can wax into intellectual all this stuff, and I do appreciate your questions, don't get me wrong, but in a lot of them I really can't answer. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what you'd probably be better at answering those questions than me, right? Because you're very familiar with who this person is that you're referring to and so forth. And I wish I could answer the questions that you want, right? And I do try to answer your questions based on what I know about this information. Like I said, I'm a one-trick pony, man. I don't answer every question, right? So I can answer the questions that my trainees have about my work, right? But I can answer questions about this. And if my daughter, but see, you can even ask my daughter. My daughter will ask me mathematical questions, and I don't know the answer to them anymore. Her math is much different than mine. I didn't learn ways she learned when I was coming up through school. So I even have to tell her, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna have to tell you on some of this stuff, I don't know, man. I don't really have an answer to it. But when it's fun to ask these questions like you're asking and try to answer it and everything. But, how do I say this? I guess my question would be, what does it really serve? What purpose is it really serving? Does that make sense? And I don't want to offend you, and I don't want to make you mad, because I know I'm asking you questions, and I don't want to, don't want you to ask me, don't want to discourage you from asking these questions. But the most important thing is Maitreya's priorities, which is peace. You know what I mean? Somebody's view about Maitreya, this, that, and the other, I could care less. You know what I mean? Because that's just their view on this, and they think that Trump might be Maitreya or the anti. It doesn't matter to me. You know what I'm saying? And it shouldn't matter to you, right? Don't waste your time with those things. Is I guess my fundamental answer to your questions, because it's does it add any value to your life? Listening to those people, does it make you happier? And if it does, continue to listen to those people. If it doesn't, don't listen to them and move on, right? If you think it's helping the world by you reading, what's her name? Hannah, I always forget, or, I'm trying to think, Hannah Newman's book. If it makes you a better person and a better server of the race of people, if that's what it is, that's great. I don't agree with what she says about Maitreya or about the New World Order or anything like this, because I know there isn't any truth to it. It's just somebody's fear about what they read from Benjamin Creme. They'd never even heard Maitreya yet on TV and recognized him yet. They've never seen Maitreya in person. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to discourage you from asking these questions. It's just, one, I don't know the answer to all this stuff. And two, it doesn't really matter. The most important, it's getting time critical right now. We have to start focusing on what we can do to help save the environment and save the planet. If reading Hannah Newman or reading, going to this YouTuber brother, Key or whatever his name, the QAnon conspiracy theorist guy, if that is going to help you help the world, then by all means, listen to them and read it. If it doesn't, I would say don't waste your time. and save your energy for better things, but like I said, I might have ticked you off. I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's my view on it. And I can try to answer these questions, but to be honest with you, I really, like I said, I can answer it. I can try to answer even the questions about Alice Bailey and somebody's view of this, and they read this page and it meant this to them and blah, 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 blah. That is just their beliefs. That is just their view of Alice Bailey, and, it may be true, it may be not, right? And it doesn't really matter to me, because I trust the information coming from Alice Bailey. I trust the information coming from these masters because it resonates as truth within my heart. If it doesn't resonate for truth within you, then don't listen to them. Don't read Alice Bailey. If what you're seeing from these other people resonates within your heart as true, then that's what's truth for you. I say it in every video. I'm not trying to change anybody's beliefs. I'm not trying to convince somebody else. I'm just trying to tell you how important it is to save the planet. So does that make sense? So I know I didn't answer your question the way you wanted. Hopefully I didn't tick you off too much, but sometimes we got to hear it. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.